full memory flooded back, and Sam cried aloud, "It wasn't a dream. Then where are we?" And a voice spoke softly behind him, "In the land of Ithilien, and in the keeping of the king, and he awaits you." With that, Gandalf stood before him, robed in white, his beard now gleaming like pure snow in the twinkling of the leafy sunlight. "Well, Master Samwise, how do you feel?" he said. But Sam lay back and stared with open mouth, and for a moment, between bewilderment and great joy, he could not answer. At last he gasped, "Gandalf, I thought you were dead, but then I thought I was dead myself. Is everything sad going to come untrue? What's happened to the world?" "A great shadow has departed," said Gandalf, and then he laughed, and the sound was like music, or like water in a parched land. "How do I feel?" he cried. "Well, I don't know how to say it. I feel... He waved his arms in the air. "I feel like spring after winter and sun on the leaves, and like trumpets and harps and all the songs I've ever heard." He stopped and he turned towards his master. "But how's Mr. Frodo?" he said. "Isn't it a shame about his poor hand? But I hope he's all right otherwise. He's had a cruel time."
Needs his rest.
"Yes, I'm all right otherwise," said Frodo, sitting up and laughing in his turn. "I fell asleep again waiting for you, Sam, you sleepyhead. I was awake early this morning, and now it must be nearly noon."
Three cheers for Frodo.
"Why, look, Mr. Frodo, look here. Well, if it isn't Pippin, Mr. Peregrine Took, I should say, and Mr. Merry. How they have grown. Bless me, but I can see there's more tales to tell than ours." He made them stand back to back with Frodo and himself. He scratched his head. "Can't understand it at your age," he said, "but there it is. You're 3 inches taller than you ought to be, or I'm a dwarf." "That you certainly are not," said Gimli. "But what did I say? Mortals cannot go drinking Ent draughts and expect no more to come of them than a pot of beer." "I," said Legolas, "shall walk in the woods of this fair land, which is rest enough." And there in the midst of the fields they set up their pavilions and awaited the morning, for it was the eve of May, and the king would enter his gates with the rising of the sun. Frodo ran to meet Aragorn, and Sam followed close behind. "Well, if this isn't the crown of all," he said. "Strider, or I'm still asleep." "Yes, Sam, Strider," said Aragorn. "It is a long way, is it not, from Bree, where you did not like the look of me? A long way for us all, but yours has been the darkest road." And then, to Sam's surprise and utter confusion, he bowed his knee before them.
The gates of the city lie before us. It is time at last. I wish to thank you for the great help you have provided to me and to Middle-earth.
When the days of rejoicing were over at last, the companions thought of returning to their own homes. And Frodo went to the king as he was sitting with the Queen Arwen by the fountain, and she sang a song of Valinor while the tree grew and blossomed. They welcomed Frodo and rose to greet him, and Aragorn said, "I know what you have come to say, Frodo. You wish to return to your own home. Well, dearest friend, the tree grows best in the land of its sires. But for you, in all the lands of the West, they will ever be a welcome. And though your people have had little fame in the legends of the great, they will now have more renown than many wide realms that are no more." "Then I beg leave to depart soon," said Frodo. "In 7 days we will go," said Aragorn, "for we shall ride with you far on the road, even as far as the country of Rohan. In 3 days now Eomer will return hither to bear Theoden back to rest in the Mark, and we shall ride with him to honour the fallen." At length, after 15 days of journey, the wain of King Theoden passed through the green fields of Rohan and came to Edoras, and there they all rested. The golden hall was arrayed with fair hangings, and it was filled with light, and there was held the highest feast that it had known since the days of its building. For after 3 days the men of the Mark prepared the funeral of Theoden, and he was laid in a house of stone, with his arms and many other fair things that he had possessed. And over him was raised a great mound, covered with green turves of grass and of white evermind.
I do not know.
Now the guests were ready, and they drank the stirrup cup, and with great praise and friendship they departed, and came at length to Helm's Deep. And there they rested 2 days. Then Legolas repaid his promise to Gimli and went with him to the glittering caves.
I am afraid of what is happening to these lands.
From Deepingcombe they rode to Isengard and saw how the Ents had busied themselves. "Saruman," said Treebeard. "No, he's not dead so far as I know, but he is gone. Yes, he is gone 7 days. I let him go. There was little left of him when he crawled out, and as for that worm creature of his, he was like a pale shadow. Now do not tell me, Gandalf, that I promised to keep him safe, for I know it. But things have changed since then, and I kept him until he was safe from doing any more harm. You should know that above all I hate the caging of live things, and I will not keep even such creatures as these caged beyond great need. A snake without fangs may crawl where he will. You may be right, said Gandalf, but this snake had still one tooth left, I think. He had the poison of his voice. All save Legolas said that they must now take their leave and depart either south or west. Come, Gimli, said Legolas. Now, by Fangorn's leave, I will visit the deep places of the Entwood, and see such trees as are nowhere else to be found in Middle-earth. You shall come with me and keep your word, and thus we will journey on together to our own lands, in Mirkwood and beyond. To this Gimli agreed, though with no great delight it seemed. Here then at last comes the ending of the Fellowship of the Ring, said Aragorn. Yet I hope that ere long you will return to my land, with the help that you promised. The travellers now rode with more speed, and they made their way towards the Gap of Rohan, and Aragorn took leave of them at last. The hobbits were grieved at this parting, for Aragorn had never failed them, and he had been their guide through many perils. Soon the dwindling company, following the Ison, turned west and rode through the gap into the wastelands beyond, and then they turned northwards and passed over the borders of Dunland.
Welcome, my friend.
I have not seen your kind before.
Next day they went on into northern Dunland, where no men now dwelt, though it was a green and pleasant country.
We have little to say to your kind.
What do you need? What can I do for you?
So they passed into Aragian, and at last a fair morning dawned, shimmering above gleaming mists, and looking from their camp on a low hill, the travellers saw away in the east the sun catching 3 peaks that thrust up into the sky through floating clouds, Caradhras, Celebdil, and Fanuidhol. They were near to the gates of Moria. Here now for 7 days they tarried, for the time was at hand for another parting, which they were loath to make. Soon Celeborn and Galadriel and their folk would turn eastward, and so pass by the Redhorn Gate and down the Dimril Stair to the Silverlode and to their own country. But at length all was said, and they parted again for a while, until it was time for the 3 rings to pass away. Quickly fading into the stones and the shadows, the grey-cloaked people of Lorien rode towards the mountains, and those who were going to Rivendell sat on the hill and watched, until there came out of the gathering mist a flash, and then they saw no more. Frodo knew that Galadriel had held aloft her ring in token of farewell.
May Govanen.
At last one evening they came over the high moors, suddenly, as to travellers it always seemed, to the brink of the deep valley of Rivendell, and saw far below the lamps shining in Elrond's house. And they went down and crossed the bridge and came to the doors. and all the house was filled with light and song for joy at Elrond's homecoming. First of all, before they had eaten or washed or even shed their cloaks, the hobbits went in search of Bilbo. He looked very old, but peaceful and sleepy. He opened his eyes and looked up as they came in. "Hello, hello," he said. "So you've come back. And tomorrow's my birthday too. How clever of you. Do you know I shall be 129? And in 1 year more, if I am spared, I shall equal the old Took. I should like to beat him, but we shall see." As Frodo stood upon the threshold, Elrond wished him a fair journey and blessed him, and he said, "I think, Frodo, that maybe you will not need to come back unless you come very soon, for about this time of the year, when the leaves are gold before they fall, look for Bilbo in the woods of the Shire. I shall be with him."
Sweet-eyed Malon.
May Govanen.
What do you want?
So it was that near the end of a wild and wet evening in the last days of October, the 5 travellers rode up the climbing road and came to the south gate of Bree. At last they came to the prancing pony, and that at least looked outwardly unchanged, and there were lights behind the red curtains in the lower windows. They rang the bell, and Nob came to the door and opened it a crack and peeped through. And when he saw them standing under the lamp, he gave a cry of surprise. "Mr. Butterbur! Master!" he shouted. "They've come back." "Oh, have they? I'll learn 'em," came Butterbur's voice, and out he came with a rush, and he had a club in his hand, but when he saw who they were, he stopped short, and the black scowl on his face changed to wonder and delight. "Nob, you woolly-pated ninny, can't you give old friends their names? You shouldn't go scaring me like that with times as they are. I've something that belongs to you. If you recollect Bill Fernie and the horse thieving, his pony as you bought, well, it's here. Come back all of itself, it did. But where it had been to, you know better than me. It was as shaggy as an old dog and as lean as a clothes rail, but it was alive. Nob's looked after it." "What, my Bill?" cried Sam. "Well, I was born lucky, whatever my gaffer may say. There's another wish come true. Where is he?" Sam would not go to bed until he had visited Bill in his stable.
Greetings.
In a little while they came to the point on the east road where they had taken leave of Bombadil, and they hoped and half expected to see him standing there to greet them as they went by. But there was no sign of him, and there was a grey mist on the Barrow Downs southwards, and a deep veil over the old forest far away. Gandalf turned Shadowfax off the road, and the great horse leapt the green dyke that here ran beside it, and then at a cry from Gandalf he was gone, racing towards the Barrow Downs like a wind from the north. "Well, here we are, just the four of us that started out together," said Merry. "We've left all the rest behind, one after another. It seems almost like a dream that has slowly faded." "Not to me," said Frodo. "To me it feels more like falling asleep again."